I'm here today. I think we're having like a full house of Evangelical Alliance staff. I have Cara with me today. Hello, Cara.
Hi, Andy.
It's been quite fun. We didn't kind of plan to work through the entire team at Evangelical Alliance, but we've had Phil Knox, we've had Rachel Heather, the third person whose name's completely escaped me, and now you. So that's four, I think.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope I'm not a disappointment after the other three.
I severely doubted, but now I'm feeling terrible. Who was the third person I interviewed? I don't remember. Terrible. Wendy.
Wendy, was it Wendy? Oh, am I going after Wendy? Oh my. What shoes to fill?
But it's great. Do you know that the one thing that I love? I get to meet lots of people, obviously, and I interview them. And I got to say, I don't know what's going on at EA, Evangelical Alliance, but everyone I talk to is so enthusiastic about other people on the team, so enthusiastic about life, so excited by the Evangelical Alliance. Something good clearly is going on within your team to get such just a commonality of excitement about what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I feel like it's such a blessing to work in the EA. I've been part of EA now for about 3.5 years. I'm doing a slightly different role now from what I used to do. But one of the reasons that I love working there, one of the reasons why it's just a joy to do what I do, is the other people in the staff team. We've recently spent some time in our annual retreat together, so about 60 of us together in this kind of big old house in Hertfordshire, really just talking about our work, but having some fun, having some downtime, having real chance to connect with everybody. And yeah, there's just a lot of energy around the different teams and what everyone is doing. And yeah, we just kind of feed off each other. So yeah, it's a brilliant experience to work with them. They all bring really different things to EA. But yeah, in my time there, it's been really great to connect with some just really big brains, some people who've got an amazing heart for evangelism, and but everybody just has an amazing heart for Jesus, and it does just make work that little bit more fun.
Which is what I would undoubtedly say. I've not actually met anybody from the EA in person. I've just had a few interview chats or whatever, and there's just this bubbling excitement of the people together, which is just fabulous.
Absolutely. And I think, I just think it's an organization that just has a really simple shared goal. To make Jesus known to everybody, and everybody knows what small part they play in that. Everybody knows what their role does to contribute towards that. And it's just so great to get together just to hear about just the different places and spaces that people have gone to, the people they've met, some of the encouragements, some of the stories. And I think it's a brilliant place to work because being there and hearing from the people, particularly those who go out and speak to a lot of different people on Sundays or who connect with a lot of organisations and churches, just such a challenge, to the kind of narrative that's out there that nobody's really interested in church or Christianity's, for these sort of boring people over in the corner. I mean, we're far from that. And it just really shows from the stories that we hear from people just how willing people are to connect with us, how much they want to hear what we've got to say, and how much we can kind of just bounce ideas off each other as a staff team.
Fab. Right. So I want to come back to Evangelical Alliance. When I've chatted to your colleagues, they've obviously told me about the bit that they do. But let's go back a bit in time further for you. You're working for a Christian organisation. What's your own personal journey of faith?
Oh gosh. So I've got quite an interesting testimony. So I only became a Christian about 7 years ago. So previous to that, didn't grow up in a Christian family. Been in and around church with my children and different things, but never. I wouldn't have described myself as a person of faith. Didn't go to church regularly. Um, Born and raised in Glasgow, lived here all my life until about 7 years ago when I moved down to Surrey in southeast of England, and was really just lonely. I've got a very big family, so I've got 5 children. But at the time, I just had my fourth child and didn't know anybody there, didn't know how to get anywhere, no kind of points of reference at all. And the first place that I found to go and try and make friends was a church toddler group. And walked past it twice, hummed and hawed, thought, I don't know if I'm going to go in, went in and just met a really lovely group of people, really welcoming group of people. People were interested in where I'd come from, interested in introducing me to other people. I just felt really warm and appreciated. And so for the next couple of weeks, I started to go back. But having met them, I just I just loved the way they were. They were so different from anybody else I'd ever met. And I just had a real sense, I want to come to this church. I want to bring my family to this church. I don't really know why, but I just felt it would be a good thing to do. It was a really good extension of the people I'd met in the toddler group, and I wanted to get to know them a bit more. I wanted to be a bit more like them. So we started going along to that church. And the more time I spent in that church, the more time I spent with those people, the more I wanted to know about Jesus, the more I started to tune into what they were telling me in that church, the more I could see the meaning of it in my own life. And the comfort that it started to give me being in a strange place, not knowing anybody, it was a comfort to me personally in that way, and that I was starting to make connections and I was starting to feel more comfortable. But I felt more comfortable in my own life, learning about Jesus, really felt the messages I was hearing working in my own life. I would go away and think about them and just want to know more. And so that was my first introduction to faith with through that church. And quite soon after, then I experienced a number of difficulties in my life. I was expecting my fifth child, and there was a lot of complications with her just because I was really a bit older and a bit wearier of parenthood. But long story short, she was born very healthy, and throughout that time, I had a huge amount of support in the church. I got to know the minister there really well, and started going along to small groups there. Started to just feel such reassurance and calm every time I was there. It was a place I looked forward to going to. It was a place where, from the kind of confusion and the sort of worry in my home life, church was a contrast to that. Church was a place that really helped with it. And so little baby Nancy was born, and she was born completely healthy, praise God. And she was actually she was part as a 10-day-old neonatal little baby. She was part of the church nativity. The thing that will always stay with me. Never been part of a church nativity before, but she was a little real life newborn in the crib. And then soon after that, so still going to church, but really leaning into church at that point, really grateful for the support I'd had, really wanting to know more, really wanting to be part of that community and part of those people. But 3 weeks after that, my oldest daughter was diagnosed with cancer. So I had a newborn baby and a daughter who was very, very ill. And that came completely out of the blue. It came from absolutely nothing. And she's completely healthy and fine now. She had a year's worth of treatment. She had every possible intervention under the sun, and we're very, very grateful for everything that was done for her. She's amazing now. She's a very fit, healthy 12-year-old footballer. Great. In that time of that treatment, I do not know where I would be without church, without Jesus, without my faith. I've never felt my faith as strong as I felt it when she was ill. And I genuinely believe that I went to that church. I met Jesus in the church. He called me to him, and he knew that I would need help. He knew what was coming, and he knew that faith was the only way that I would get through that. And I actually moved back to Glasgow at that point in time. So it was during COVID, and it was as much arranged to leave that church almost as it was to leave anything else. I'm still really connected to that church down in Surrey. I still go and visit them nearly every month. I'm really blessed in the way that I can do that. But I came to another church here in Glasgow. I had friends who were in church here who recommended Newton Mearns Baptist Church to me. And I've been going there ever since. And since then, my faith has deepened. I was baptised 2 months after my daughter was given the all clear during COVID in front of my family and 4 people who were in my house group. And when I say a house group, we never met each other because we couldn't meet each other. So the first time I ever met them was at my baptism.
Oh, fab.
So you were only allowed like 12 people there. And from that, I was working in banking and decided that I just had a real sense, I had a real energy after being baptised, as many people will tell you that they do, and a real sense I wanted to use my faith for something. I didn't know quite what. I got into volunteering in various different ways, but I just had a sense there was something else out there. And a lady at my church I'd never heard of the Evangelical Alliance, said to me, we've seen this job. One of the people who's on the board of this organisation has passed this job to us. They're looking for an administrator in the Scottish team. I thought, I wouldn't be able to get that job. I'm like, I'm not Christian enough. Like, I don't know about a Christian. I've never worked for a Christian organisation. I would never get this job. And but I looked and looked and looked, and I thought, you've been really pondering this. You've been praying about, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my faith? Maybe this is an opportunity. But I didn't really think that much more of it. I applied for the job, and I told our pastor in the church, I've applied for this job, and he said, I'll help you. And when I say he said, I'll help you, what he actually said was, if they say this, you say this. If they say this, you say this. I said, I can't say this. But I did. And I got the job. And I've told them that now. I told them, I said, I've had a significant amount of help from very serious people to get this job. And so I started working as administrator for the Scottish director at the time. And 3.5 years later, I'm still there. And I've just recently switched over to say maybe a more evangelistic role in the mission team, but still within the same organisation, still within the same amazing team of people. So yeah, I mean, it's been a huge whirlwind of a journey. It's gone from zero to really something quite significant in quite a short space of time, I think. But I feel like I'm on a journey somewhere. Only the Lord knows where that is. But yeah, it's been amazing. I'm very blessed with the opportunities that I've had, with the people that I've met who have supported me in it. And yeah, I don't quite know where I would be if I hadn't gone to that toddler group that day.
There's an awful lot to unpack in that. That toddler group was where I was going to start, because the church toddler group, much maligned, much loved, depending on your perspectives of it, and yet it is so frequently a first simple step. If you walk into a church, it's a foreign environment. You stood there on your own. How do you get involved? If you're with your child and they're playing, it's a really easy way to sit, have a cup of tea and a biscuit. They can play with some toys that you may not have at home. So that's always interesting for the child as they get older, especially. But actually, it's a really non-threatening step into what is realistically a very foreign environment until you're part of it. I mean, that toddler group, you went on about that. I mean, but that is so pivotal to your journey, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if I hadn't went there, I certainly wouldn't have gone there on a Sunday. I had no inclination to go to that church on a Sunday, but it was an introduction to the people, and it was the people. I say this to everyone. It was the people. I'm a Christian because of the other Christians that I met, because of how they behaved towards me, about just this something different that those people had, that they showed me. And I had a real sense I just wanted to be more like them. I just wanted to know them better. And they were just really caring and really welcoming in a way that really, no one else really was. And at that particular point in my time, that was exactly what I was looking for. But very quickly, from liking them and liking the way they were, I started to really like what they had to say. So I think, is that open? If you're, I didn't know I was spiritually open, but I clearly was. And to be able to connect with people that I liked, that I trusted, and who took the opportunity to tell me about Jesus, I was completely, straight away, I was open to that message because I was open to them.
I was thinking about I wanted to come on to the child who's now well, who had cancer, but you were talking about how tired you were, and your fifth child. And I remember there was a time with our third son. We lost our third child, and our fourth child, our third son came along, and it was a really, really traumatic birth. They told me afterwards, we didn't want to scare you at the time, but there was every possibility that your son could have died and your wife could have died in that procedure. It doesn't happen that often, but something got turned and twisted and confused.
Yep.
I remember how exhausted we were at that point, and until you've been there, and I recognise some of what you were talking about. Until you've had that sort of exhaustion, that sort of traumatic stuff, it's very hard to paint the picture of just how difficult it is to get up in the morning and get a glass of water, because you have to physically process so hard getting a glass and sticking it under a tap, because your brain's gone. And we sort of joke about new parent tiredness. It's very real. but there's other levels. But I love how through all of that, as your life, you're sort of getting deeper and deeper into a black hole, I suppose, of difficulty.
Yeah,
Yet God was there leading you to him. And at that most difficult moment, as you get that diagnosis, I can kind of picture some of that, having had a child who's had some real long-term illness.
yeah,
It's really hard. But in that moment, that's where in our weakness, then God's strength, God's light, God's hope, God's peace, that then starts to come through.
absolutely.
Um, for people who are listening or watching this and saying, "I've just had a diagnosis, my child has got
Yeah,
whatever illness.
yeah,
I don't know Jesus. Why would he help me? How can you? What can you say? Having been through the pain you've been through, so you've been through a real struggle. How can you
yeah.
encourage others to look to God?
It's so difficult because, it's one of those things at the time you just can't make sense of anything. You can't process anything. You're on a one level, you're processing the information you've been given, but on the other hand, you're really not, because you're entering into a world that's unfamiliar. People are telling you all different things, and it doesn't feel real. It feels like it's happening to somebody else. For me, my conversations with God were a lifesaver. I felt like I could pour out to God things I couldn't pour out to anybody, things that I was too scared to vocalize to anybody else. I could say them to God. And I had a real sense, despite the different things I was told, despite the uncertainties around Morven's diagnosis, because nobody was ever particularly sure. We were never given any reassurances of how this would turn out. I knew, I just knew that God would protect Morven. I just had this real sense that God was with me, was with us, and that he would protect Morven. I couldn't. You could go round in circles. Why did this happen to us? Why did this have to happen to Morven? And I didn't really allow myself to go there. I just, in my conversations with God, I knew that He would protect Morven. And having God was a way of not allowing myself to disappear down the black holes that you can so easily disappear down. But still, some days I find myself perhaps going towards, but my faith and my conversations with God and my Bible and the promises of the Bible that God makes to each one of us help to lift me out of that black hole. And if I can make any sense of all that's happened to me, God has brought me to where I am now through what happened to my daughter. Now, I don't know why. We won't know why. We can't know why. But I do know that there is a purpose to it, that there was a purpose to all of that. And seeing that purpose in it is helpful. It's very difficult at the time to see a purpose. I mean, most days I really couldn't see that. I just had to lean into the fact that at least I had something. And there was something there. Without faith, how do you make sense of that?
Mm.
How do you even try and comprehend something like that happening to a child completely out of the blue? No rhyme or reason to it. Nobody can explain to you why that's happened or what's going to happen. Without something to anchor that to, I cannot imagine where you would go.
But what was beautiful is God had already set up himself as a place to go to, and in that desperate time of I suppose despair would be the word that I would assume was on your
Yeah,
heart. You're overwhelmed, like you say, that the stuff going on. We had a miscarriage with our third child, and you're trying to get through the day. We had two little kids as well, toddlers, who wanted to be played with, and you're trying to go through all that and just processing the emotions. It's more than you can do when it's quite numb, don't you? But you just have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going.
yeah,
And it's just beautiful how God's led you into a place where you could reach out to who He was wanting to be in your life.
yeah. And I think that reaching out to him was what saved me. And the days when Morven, my daughter's name's Morven, she would go in for chemotherapy of a weekend. So she would go Friday to a Sunday, and I would just be in there on my own, just sometimes with the newborn baby as well, but just us and God. And I just felt in that I still occasionally go back to that hospital because they do a kind of celebration of life Christmas concert every year. I've just been a
Sure.
couple of weeks ago, and it's just a place. It's a place where I feel closest to God. Even now going in there, I know God was so close to me in that point. I can't explain it because I've never felt it the same anywhere else. But I just, when I needed the presence of God, he showed up absolutely, and he pulled me through that. And I, I've spoken to other people in different types of circumstances, but they've told me the same thing. Their faith grew so much stronger through challenge, through trauma, through adversity, and that's certainly been my experience. I certainly don't think I'd be doing the job I'm doing now. I certainly don't think I would be as passionate about telling people about the difference Jesus can make if I hadn't experienced that myself.
Thank you for sharing some of that. I can recognize in some way small elements of that, and it is so hard, isn't it? But I definitely also would absolutely recognize that through those dark times, those difficult times, those despairing times, may not feel like it at the time, but as I look back, I think, wow, God was holding me, not just holding me, but actually I was growing closer to him, and in some ways perhaps not even being fully aware of it, because like we've said, you're just kind of, you overwhelm, your brain's numb, and you
Yeah.
just you're just shuffling forwards. And yet I look back and think, but God was there, and God was carrying me. And actually I can look back and see how much I grew to love him and trust him more and depend upon him even more because of those difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, that dependence on God, if without him, who do you depend on? I mean, obviously you've got your family, you do have your support networks, but it's just that sheer, honesty and vulnerability that you can have with God. I think you just can't have with anyone else. And just, yeah, just that sense, I think, that there's somebody in it with you, somebody really in that situation with you is the difference that it's certainly made to me at that time and going forward in my life. I've never lost that connection with God. I tell God everything. I want to tell God everything. The minute something happens during the day, I'll be telling God about it. And that came from that experience because chatting through what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what I'd been told with God was kind of habit that formed at that time and has been one that's really saved me through all different things, not perhaps as traumatic as that, but it has been helpful, has been encouraging, has been really life-saving in all different ways.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that part of your life. I really hope and pray that someone listening or watching is facing, not that they're facing a difficulty, but in that difficulty that they can hear the real words of somebody else who has said, you know what, I've been through those times, and God carried me through. Let's move back
Yes.
to the EA, the job you're doing. I see somebody who is deeply passionate about Jesus, and I've only met you for what, half an hour or so. Just tell us more about the role that you're actually doing. So you started as admin for the Scottish Director. Now you're working in I get the wrong word, evangelism, leading to the vowel, evangelism with Rachel. So just tell us more about
Yeah.
the role that you're doing.
So my role is the mission coordinator and communications. So instead of being in Scotland, it's a UK wide role. So I go down to London maybe once or twice a month, and partly I'm supporting work of Rachel and Phil, so enabling them to go out and speak to people and do all the incredible things that they do. But partly I'm also learning how to go and do that myself. So I'm learning about the different pieces of research that the EA have, particularly the Talking Jesus research. And I've already begun to take that out to my places and spaces in Scotland. And hopefully in the new year, I'll be taking that beyond. So I'm taking much more of a direct role in sharing Jesus, in sharing the research, but also sharing my experiences, sharing my testimony with people. I'm going to be sharing my testimony a little bit more fully through EA in the new year. And a big part of my role is in writing. So I write various different missional articles for EA, which is an extension of something that I do for my own church. So I'm happiest actually just locked away in a room with a theme or a passage and trying to write something on it. But in each of the types of things that I write, I can't do the sort of highbrow theological pieces. I'm very much more about trying to share my own heart, trying to share my own experiences. So trying to make kind of what I write relatable to people who are exploring Jesus. Perhaps there are people who've had Jesus in their life for a long time. Perhaps there are people who've never met Jesus. But trying to show my journey and trying to show the difference that Jesus can make and the difference that sharing Jesus can make to all sorts of people.
And your journey to this point, I mean, your journey in faith, Christianity, religion, stuff, elements, it started because people were, how do I put this, were polite and respectful and kind and
Absolutely.
good and exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit to you. And that drew you towards Jesus, which just goes to prove how important we are as individuals in other people's lives.
Absolutely. I think it just all starts with people. And I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, and they were saying, I'd love to. Sometimes I wish I could share Jesus. I could talk to people about Jesus. I feel like I miss opportunities to talk to people about Jesus. And I said, Joe, I do that too. There's so many times I think, I want to say this, but I don't know how to. I said, but I think one of the best ways that we can share Jesus is by being ourselves, is by showing what as Christians makes us different, what makes us good people, bringing that little bit of Jesus to people in the way that we behave and in the way that we respond and just in the way that we connect with people. So sometimes all you have to do is just be yourself, and that's enough to bring people to Jesus. And that's what happened to me. I mean, the people speaking to me about Jesus was almost a secondary thing. That came later. But the reason I wanted to know more was because I connected with the behaviors and the discussions I had just with people, just doing what they would do anyway.
Which is what we see in the life of Jesus, right? He walked on the earth, he spoke to the religious leaders, but he also connected with people at the well and in a house and at a party. And he just was who he was. And people were attracted to literally the Jesus within inside him. I don't know how that works theologically, but he literally was Jesus. And we carry some of that with us. So people can be attracted to the Jesus within us, which is exactly what Jesus did.
Absolutely. And it's all about, I think as well, for me, it's just about almost trying to dispel some of the myths around Christians and around church. And I like to give my story because there was so many things about Christians in church I misunderstood before I became part of that community. And I just feel really passionate. I feel that my role is to show that Jesus is for everybody. Jesus is for absolutely everybody. He can speak into any life, any situation, any person. It's not churches and Christians sort of sitting off at the sides of the world as some kind of weird mystical group of people. What they have and what they have to give is powerful for everyone. And if I can do a tiny little bit of sharing what I've gone through, sharing what I've experienced, if that can help to spark something in someone, then I think that is, yeah, I think that's what I can add to EA. I think that's what I can add to, Christian and church life.
Just thinking really practically for a moment in terms of what it is you're doing with EA. I mean, what is it you're actually providing that people can, hold like a pen? Yeah. What is it you're actually providing for people that can help them?
So we've got a number of resources in EA, but the main kind of, and those are for church leaders, but they're also just for people who are interested in exploring different aspects of faith. The Talking Jesus report that I mentioned earlier on is really out there to encourage Christians. It's a report that was initially done back in it's a report that was done in 2022. It was initially done in 2015, but it's looking at how non-Christians see Christian people, and it's also taking a small sample of people who already are Christians and looking at how kind of what barriers and challenges they face in sharing their faith. And the reason that I'm interested in that research, and the reason I think I'm quite well placed to go and talk about it, is it's looking for things that encourage us to share our faith, looking for things that it can tell us that, for example, non-Christians think about Christians, about how positively they view us, all the different amazing, that they are fun, that they are caring, that they are wise. These are all the adjectives that, in this survey, non-Christians would use to describe Christians. It also tells us that 53% of people want to know more when they've had a conversation about Jesus. So if someone has spoken to them about Jesus, they are open to knowing more. There are all different encouragements in that research, which just really challenge that kind of idea that, oh, do you know, I better not speak to people about Jesus because he won't be interested. I better not speak to people about Jesus because, they won't find that, they just won't find any commonality with that. So there's the reason that we do these pieces of research and we produce these resources is to encourage church leaders in what they're doing, but also to encourage ordinary Christians out there that, you are really well placed to share, that there's spiritual openness out there if you want to grasp it and speak to people about it.
Cara, thank you for sharing some of that. I can see how some of your past is so valuable to others, and I've seen this so many times in people I've spoken to. I think as Christians, we think that the really highlights, the good, the amazing bits that we can do, that's how we talk to people about Jesus. But actually, what I've seen is the complete opposite. It's the difficult and the darker moments of our life that every single one of us on this planet is going to go through. Those are the bits that help us to connect with other people, to say, you know what, we've been through the same thing, but although we went through the same darkness, we had a hope, we had a light, we had peace,
Absolutely.
we had joy, and we had Jesus in our lives. And that's the difference that walking through those difficult times goes. Isaiah 43, one of my favorite scriptures. God will be with us not when we've come through the water, but he'll be with us as we go through the floods and as we go through the fires. God is there walking with us.
Absolutely. He doesn't take you out of these situations. He gets down in there into those situations with you, and he pulls you through. And that's certainly, I mean, I can speak firsthand, of how that has worked for me. And, as somebody who doesn't have a Christian background, but who experienced that moment of meeting Jesus, I genuinely believe if you're open to it, anybody can meet Jesus, and just power and just the difference that they will find in their everyday, how much easier their everyday life will be to have that to lean into. Something it's really difficult to describe to somebody that doesn't have it, but having not had it and now having it in my life, I think, I just like to try if I can to articulate the difference to people. And it's not to say that it's always easy. I mean, there have been a number of challenges about becoming a Christian. We're not promised a challenge-free life. Of course, we're not. But, as we've just said, Jesus is in there in the challenges. He's there in them all. And, he he can pull you through those things in a way that, if he's not there, what else is there to pull you through these things sometimes?
Amen to that. I shared this a long time ago, but I remember being at school and someone said, "You're only a Christian because you're using it as a crutch to get through life." And I said, "Have you got another crutch? Because this one works. If I can get two of these, I'll have them. I'll have four. I don't care." Because we all need that help in life to get through. Because life's hard, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like there's degrees of difficulty, even there's major things that happen in life. There are little things that happen in life. But the thing is that you've got someone to bring those things to. You've got somebody to talk to about them, and you've got somebody to place your trust in that those things are going to work out. That I always believe it's going to work out. If it's not working out, it's not the end, and Jesus has, a different plan. And that is a hard thing to explain to people, that you are giving yourself over to someone else's plans. I mean, and I'm not always very good at that. I mean, I want to have my own plans. I want to have my own way. I want to have them in the time scales that I want them to be. And I've been as disappointed and distressed as the next person when those things have not happened. But how many times that something hasn't happened and you then later see why it hasn't happened and something better happens, or you think, thank goodness I didn't get that job. Thank goodness I didn't get that house. You know, thank goodness I didn't go to whatever it was. And but at the time, you know, like everybody else, you're just like, why God is that? Why has that happened? But you know, it's just as you become more mature as a Christian, giving yourself over to someone else's plans is can be really, you know, it can be really peace giving. You can just say, I hand it to you, God, I leave it to you. There are things I've got going in my life that fall into that category right now, and I just pray about them and I hand them over rather than me trying to worry about what do I do about them, what should I do, should I do this, should I do that. Yeah, I just try and discern what the right thing is to do, and very much very much leave it to him.
I love the phrase you used, and I'm going to add a little bit at the start. Knowing Jesus is peace giving.
Yes. It really, I mean, it is, it gives me so much peace because I just, and it's not that I don't worry, I do worry, but I worry proportionately because, and I very much would be a disproportionate worrier because I like to just do that and catastrophize. But I think being a Christian does help you with that. I think you, of course, there are things you should worry about, but actually, you know, I think having faith to lean into, knowing that we have a loving Father who is for us, is is a way of minimizing those worries, and at the very least, knowing that there's somebody out there that's got them.
Amen to that. If people want to get hold of Evangelical Alliance, and particularly the work you were talking about, Talking Jesus, was that the one?
Talking Jesus, yeah. Yeah, they can. We at the mission team love to talk to people. We love to go and visit people, and we love to hear people. More importantly, not just for us to talk about things, but we love to hear from people. So we love to hear people's encouragements. We love to hear. We just love to hear what God's doing. And so if people have got stories about what God's doing that they'd love to share with us, or they would like to hear a bit more about what we do, we can be contacted at mission@eauk.org. And you can get me or one of my colleagues. Yeah. We love to hear sharing and we love to share.
Cara, thank you. It's a beautiful story of, not a beautiful story of difficulty, but a beautiful story of through the difficulty, God's faithfulness through that. And I'm just so delighted that you shared that. And I really hope and pray that will help somebody else today when they're watching or listening to this later as well. Cara, thank you from the Evangelical Alliance, eauk.org.uk.
No,
No.
eauk.org.
I was trying to remember before we started the interview. eauk.org. Cara, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's been fantastic to speak to you.